45 minutes later, we were still standing on line. We didn't count on the fact they were short of help that night. And the crowd was pressing in, shall we say, as we were waiting for our table. This gentleman was standing next to me, and he looked at me. I came right from church, so I was wearing still my black shirt and collar. And he said to me, he said, "Are you a preacher?" And I said, "Well, yes, I am." Good fool. And he said, "Well, I'm a preacher too." He said, "I'm at a congregation up in Wabasa." I said, "Really? That's great." Thinking, well, that was the table we're here right now. But he decided to give me his testimony. And we had time. So he continued to talk, and then got that uncomfortable silence where you think you kind of talk yourself out of somebody you really didn't know. And then he started to give me the Ten Commandments. This is true. I can't make this up. And all of a sudden my mind starts wandering back to vacation Bible schools, back to confirmation class, back to Sunday school itself, and you know, God's with me, I'm not taking a name, like I'm going, working there again. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, where's the table? The gentleman walked out who'd already eaten, and he said, "This is my pastor." He says, "He's 92 years old." And I'm looking at him, I'm thinking, maybe he's 70, but I didn't think he's 92. And all of a sudden I shut up and listened to commandment number 8, commandment number 9, commandment number 10. And I realized the fact that this is part of our DNA, those of us who profess and call ourselves Christians. We may not be able to remember all the Ten Commandments from out of law like we did in Sunday school, but we know that when we hear them, that we claim them as our own. There are some churches, and some of the old colonial churches in the Episcopal Church, that have them. Remember, see, some of those churches maybe came from a church like that up north. I know a Bruton Parish in Williamsburg, they have them on the wall at the communion table. They don't call it an altar in Virginia, it's a communion table. And low church, high church. Old argument, never mind. But on one wall they have the Ten Commandments, on the other wall they have the Lord's Prayer. Literally cut into stone. The reminder to us that indeed these are touchstones of who we are and what we are when we profess and call ourselves Christians. Remembering the fact in your confirmation class, the 3 things you need to know: the Ten Commandments, the Lord's Prayer, and the Apostles' Creed. Remember that? Yes. Old Catechism, remember the Old Catechism? That's what you had to know. You do that, you get confirmed. So, the Ten Commandments really kind of works on you when you think about it and work through it. It's not something that we kind of learn and kind of cast off. It's part of who we are. When we heard it being read just a few moments ago in the book of Exodus, you can't help but think how those on the outside of the faith, those who are outside of the Christian faith, outside of the Jewish faith, when they hear that thou shalt not, all they can focus in on is all that negativity. But when you're hearing it, as the people of God must have heard it the first time, when Moses came down off the mountaintop after breaking the law and throwing the golden calf into the fire and all that craziness, after he got the second set of commandments back, where he's able to say to the people of God, this is how we are to live. Not a bunch of thou shalt not, but indeed a parameter, if you will, of how the people of God will live. This is where we are. We will go no further than what these laws have to say for us. This is the foundation of how we are to be. We are to care in our relationship with God and our relationship with one another. If you can keep that relationship between God and your neighbor, have that reflected, we're doing a pretty good job. Let's go forward. And this is the image that the people of God held on to as they wandered through the desert those 40 years. These 10 commandments, these 10 words, if you will, as they come to celebrate that. You duty toward your God and duty toward your neighbor. We just heard the gospel a moment ago, the cleansing of the temple, John's account of the cleansing of the temple. And in that, you have the beginning of Jesus' ministry in the Gospel of John, as opposed to the end of Jesus' ministry in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. You have Jesus announcing to the people of God that indeed this is my house of prayer, this is God's house, and we're not going to be selling stuff in it any longer. You're not going to make it a den of thieves. You're not going to do these kinds of things any longer. And he makes a whip of cords. He starts whipping it around, scaring all those animals out of there, throwing money. He didn't get that image, did you? You see, well, part of it, he lost an hour last night. This is the worst Sunday of the year. That alarm went off at 5, but my body said 4. Even the dogs didn't pick trying to say that the problem with the substitutionary sacrifice is that it's all for show. It's all on the outside. And what does that mean? Well, for the animals, they obviously gave up their lives. They were sacrificed on the altar. People bought them. Well, before they could buy them, though, if they were Jewish, obviously, they couldn't walk around and use the money of the Roman Empire to purchase these animals to use for sacrifices to God. They had to change their money from the Roman money to the Jewish money. And so we had the money changers there. So they were doing a wonderful job. And they were probably making a little bit of money on the side. Or maybe a lot of money on the side. Had a good job going here, making money, changing money. And so they were making money. Then they purchased the animals. And the animals were sacrificed. They did the outward visible sign, and they moved on. The sacrifice was completed. Jesus is saying it's more than that. Where's the inward spiritual grace? Where's the change that's supposed to happen in the individual believer? You see, that's what was going on here. The substitutionary sacrifice, we got to the point where we had so many layers between the actual believer and the sacrifice of God that you could do all the outward things and not really have your life changed at all. Same thing goes for us during this Lenten journey. We're the third Sunday of Lent already. I know, pretty soon you'll turn around and be Christmas, and you didn't get anything. I know, decided already. See that? But the fact of the matter is it's moving quickly. How was your Lenten journey so far? Did you give up chocolate again like you've done since you were 6 years old? Have you given up watching television? That's what happened. You know, are you setting aside money and putting it in a light box or an envelope base that you'll give at the end of Lent? Are you taking on more reading of the Bible, some quiet time? Taking time for more prayer. These are wonderful. These are things we should be encouraged, we're working through. But they're outward invisible signs. These are the things you can look upon and people say, look how religious you're coming in early to say prayers. Actually, you came for the 8 o'clock service, you didn't realize you missed the hour, so you're here a little early. So you look more devout. Actually, you were sleeping. But the fact of the matter is, it's the outward stuff. What is happening in the inward person? What is changing for us during this Lenten season? For all of us. Not just the paid professionals, but every person who walks the faith of Jesus Christ. Are we truly walking the way of the cross? Are we really understanding what sacrificial life is all about in Jesus Christ? And this is what Jesus is saying to us in this gospel we heard just a moment ago. He is now the new temple. By Jesus' sacrifice on the cross, we indeed have no barriers between us and God. Indeed, we look upon God. In fact, in John's account of the gospel, you have Jesus saying, I and the Father are one. And so when they gaze upon Jesus, they see the human face of God. That's a powerful statement when you think about it. That's the innermost understood sacramental life of who we are as a people of God, is to recognize Jesus as the human face of God. So the disciples are on there trying to put this all together. They remember the Psalm 69, after the crucifixion, after the resurrection, and they're saying, well, that's what Jesus meant. But there are others in the crowd right now who are looking at this saying, why are you casting all that? Why are you making such chaotic understanding when we're doing all the right things? Jesus is saying, if you destroy this temple in 3 days, I will rebuild it. If you destroy this whole idea of the religious life, I will bring back a religious life that's much more powerful. It's much more redemptive. It's much more tied into the humankind and how we are to be. And they're saying, the temple's going to be working on it for 46 years. You're going to tear it down? They didn't understand that Jesus' life, when he was talking about the temple himself, talking about the fact that when you gaze upon Jesus, you're being brought into a closer relationship with God, closer relationship with God, and a closer relationship with your neighbor. All they could see was the animals being scattered. All they could see was the money going up in the air, tables being overturned, chaos all over the place. They couldn't see the fact that this is God's house, where God's people come and worship Almighty God. Somehow or other they got so tired into the ritual, they missed the very soul of what their faith was all about. That can happen to us. Sometimes we can get so caught up in how we do things that we forget what our hearts and souls truly are about. That's what we come to celebrate, is how we are transformed, how we understand the sacrificial giving, sacrifice of what Christ did for us, and how we can be sacrificial understanding one to another. When we think about the cross, as we continue this journey in faith, as we heard in the 1 Corinthians letter just a moment ago, that indeed the world gazes upon us and why would anybody sacrifice himself for anybody else? That's ridiculous. That's absurd. Why would you do something like that? Indeed, the Greeks could not understand it. The Jews could not understand it. It's we who are challenged as we gaze upon the cross. That's where we see the understanding. That God cared for his humanity so much that he was able to indeed bring us into a closer relationship to understand more deeply what a sacrificial life is all about. That when we gaze upon Jesus, we saw what sacrifice is. When we gaze upon Jesus, we saw what life and living is all about. When we gaze upon Jesus, we see the reflection of your life and my life in his life. Now, as we hear the story about Jesus taking the cord, it's a cord that he uses to put people into shape. There's also a lifeline that he throws to you and me and brings us back into a relationship. Just like those 10 commandments are being brought back. Just like that man at the restaurant who was giving me his testimony and then recited the 10 commandments in our heart. What he was trying to say very simply, this is the Bible. This is how we live. This is not just something I learned in the recitation class. This is how we live. And I hope you, Pastor, are living the same way. That's really what he was trying to say. That was his testimony. And the testimony I offer to us as we gather this morning. It's not just merely the 10 words. It's not just merely 10 commandments. Not a bunch of thou shalt nots. But indeed, it's a lifeline that Jesus offers us as he gets that whip before us and brings us into the community, brings us into shape, brings us into an understanding of the sacrifice that he did for us so that you and I may live closer in community. Our duty toward God and duty toward our neighbor. That's what those 10 commandments allow us to do. And we need another image to hold on to. Think of Jesus going absolutely berserk in the temple, swinging those cords around, and saying very simply, I'm bringing the people of God together in such a way that they can see and be stirred up, that their lives will be changed in such a way that their inner life will match what their outer life is doing. It's a sacrament. And remember from your confirmation class, not only did you learn the 10 commandments and the Lord's Prayer and the Apostle Creed, but as Episcopalians, we know what a sacrament is. That outer and visible sign of the inward and spiritual grace ordained to us by Christ himself. A better way to understand Jesus in the temple than to see that sacramental. His sacrifice allows us to have life more abundantly.